der zentralen Position, nur Schwanze hat er vor sich, dann ist es Fjortoft, der ist im Strafraum und der Tor! Tor! Für die Frankfurter Eintracht, 5:1, herrje!
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball podcast. I'm your host Markus Fjortoft, talking to you from a hotel room in Manchester, but that doesn't stop me from taking you around the world for this episode, as I will be joined by Dad, who is in London covering the Chelsea-Liverpool game. Lots happening there as Graham Potter is dismissed, and now talks and rumblings of potential candidates. And there might just be a certain former Bayern manager as one of the hottest properties. We'll hear from Fabrizio Romano on that as he lists the potential candidates, as well as Tobi Altschäffl, senior reporter for Sports Bild, who will report on what's happened over the weekend of the Klassiker, as Oliver Kahn, club legend, now CEO of Bayern Munich, got into a fight with Lothar Matthäus live on television. Lothar Matthäus, one of the all-time legendary German football players. On the topic of the Klassiker, as I surely take you over to Dad, it was one of those in which Bayern showed who were the supreme leaders of the Bundesliga and why Bayern Munich win the title again and again against their closest rivals. Game done and dusted pretty much from the get-go after a terrible Kobel mistake, who has been so good for Dortmund and one of the main reasons why Dortmund had stayed undefeated following the World Cup break until this very game. After that Kobel mistake, in which Dortmund started the stronger team, it seemed as if the air was drawn out of Dortmund. They weren't able to react, and Bayern had a field day, 3-0. And I think we all were disappointed, unless you're a Bayern fan, for the lack of fight Dortmund showed. I mentioned this on Twitter as well, but nothing new from Bayern, in the sense that, yes, they've been fluctuating performances, the inconsistency in the Bundesliga being one of the main critiques of removing Nagelsmann. But remember, in the Champions League, Bayern won 8 out of 8 games. Every time they were pretty much tested in the Bundesliga, when they said this is a must-win game against the closest title candidates, if you may. And yes, they were the likes of a Union or Freiburg. They still made a statement win, reminded them. And there's nothing wrong with that, in the sense that after winning so many Bundesliga titles, slipping up, if you may, against the lesser opponents or the ones that you're expected to win might happen every now and again. But we'll see as we speak. In a couple of hours or so, Bayern will be playing Freiburg in the Cup, as they also meet them in the league, and then Manchester City in the Champions League. So without further ado, let's hear from Dad about what his thoughts were on their Klassiker.
Today live from Nike Town, where I've just seen Erling Haaland, the former Dortmund player. So that is my bridge to the Klassiker. Great music, great atmosphere here after the Norwegian, and you don't have to doubt that it's the Norwegian, was presented as the Nike new ambassador and global star. Force 9 he was called. And talking about their Klassiker, I mean, the Klassiker means classic in English, and it was so classic that Dortmund did well in the first 10 minutes, and then a terrible mistake by Kobel. And Terzic said after the game that he's been good all season, we wouldn't have been here without him, but it was a terrible mistake by him. And then it was chuk, and then Bayern was gone. And Bayern 2 points ahead now in the table, but it just feels like 12 after that mentally breakdown it is to concede 4 goals when you are the reigning champion. And I'm sorry for the DJ at the back here, but I still try to get you into the Force 9 atmosphere here. And Thomas Tuchel, speaking of a force, that was his first game, and after the game he was kind of moderate in his praise of his team. He said it was a bit too wild. He said a lot of ball losses, and he went safe in the team, put Musiala on the bench, and then he took the old experienced player in there, which I think is good. when you have your first game, you have to kind of win the team over. And Thomas Müller scoring goals for fun, and so on and so on. And you just felt that was just one of those days when a new manager arrived. Leroy Sané, he spent a lot of time with him in the week before to build him up, and Sané was brilliant on the day. So I expect him to get more playing time under Thomas Tuchel.
And that was Dad giving his thoughts on their Klassiker. Mind you, still only 2 points behind Dortmund are Bayern, and we still have a title race in April, which for us Bundesliga fans, we don't take for granted. But however, going into this game, the big lead up being Julian Nagelsmann's dismissal. Now, there have been talks in German media as to not as much why Nagelsmann got removed, because in comes Thomas Tuchel, a proven world-class manager. However, it's about the how. Fabrizio Romano was the first to come out with the fact that Julian Nagelsmann had been fired by Bayern Munich after a ski holiday. Uli Hoeneß, the former president, saying that if he hadn't gone on that ski holiday, maybe the situation could have been rectified. Maybe they could have discussed it amongst each other. As always, with around FC Hollywood, there will be drama, so to speak. The biggest club in Germany, when Oliver Kahn was pitch side with the Sky reporters, along with Lothar Matthäus, more in a journalistic capacity, as Tobi Altschäffl will allude to, he challenged Oliver Kahn on the dismissal of Julian Nagelsmann, and even stated that he had lied. But let's hear from Tobi Altschäffl, one of the foremost journalists in Germany, about what exactly went down and what has followed.
Hello to my friend Jan Aage. Well, there's a lot of trouble at the moment at Bayern Munich, that's no question. Nagelsmann was sacked, Thomas Tuchel came, and then there was the big TV fight between Oliver Kahn and Lothar Matthäus, two legends of the club. Well, they had their problems on the pitch, but now they were having like a fight live on TV. The question was, how was like the communication? How were the talks when Nagelsmann was sacked? I mean, the problem basically was we built, and Fabrizio Romano, our friend from Italy, we knew it before Nagelsmann knew anything. And the question was, who called whom, and when was the first contact, etc. And the problem was, Kahn said they tried to reach Nagelsmann. Nagelsmann, he was in the mountains. Lothar said, no, that's not really true, and you didn't behave like Bayern Munich should behave. And what was very interesting, I mean, they both were big players, but Lothar, I know him very well, and he sees himself at the moment as a journalist. So when Kahn was asked about that topic, he tried to like answer another question, and then Lothar was like a really good journalist and asking or saying to Oliver Kahn, that was not the question, please answer. And then the fight went on, and at halftime there's always a buffet for journalists and media at the Allianz Arena, and then Lothar was talking more with colleagues about that problem, that fight with Kahn. And then he said to one colleague that he had some messages that Oliver Kahn wasn't saying the truth. And then there was the big story, Lothar is saying Kahn is lying. Afterwards, Lothar denied. He said he was not saying Kahn is lying, but there is still the fight, and the fight went on. Like the next day, Oliver Kahn was at Sky at the TV studios and talking about Lothar. And the problem is, Lothar and Oliver Kahn, they played together, and there is the famous Mir san mir, the feeling of being a Bayern Munich player. And the problem itself is Lothar says the Mir san mir does not exist anymore, and Kahn says it exists. And that's what they're like discussing about. I talked to Lothar today, and he said to me he didn't want to offend or be against Bayern Munich, but when he was there, the club was for about 100 employees, and there was more Mir san mir possible. Now it's a business, and you can feel that's a business, and it's not like warm-hearted anymore. Kahn on the other side was very angry about that, and so the fight goes on. I think there will. It's very hard that the two big egos will find together again. Lothar used to be a representative of Bayern Munich. I don't think he will be that in the near future. And Kahn, he's very angry with him. I don't know who is going to make the first call, the first step. I think the fight will continue for some more weeks or months. That's my opinion. I wish you all the best, and I hope this helps you to understand a little bit more about the Bayern Munich cosmos. All the best, my friend. Bye-bye.
And that was Tobi Altschäffl reporting on Oliver Kahn, Lothar Matthäus confrontation. If you may, Mia San Mia, we are who we are, the motto of Bayern, enshrined part of their history, part of their identity, by which Lothar Matthäus thought that Bayern no longer adhered to. Now, a new era, a new dawn for Bayern Munich as they bring in Thomas Tuchel, fighting on all fronts, attempting to win the treble. But what now for Julian Nagelsmann? Still so young, one of the hottest manager properties in the world, and now with managers vying for positions, clubs looking for viable candidates, Julian Nagelsmann is one of an exclusive cohort of managers who are viable for these top managerial jobs. Now, Graham Potter has left Chelsea, been dismissed by Todd Boehly and the ownership group. But what does this mean for Julian Nagelsmann? Will he take a break? Will he go on for something immediately? Let's hear more from the transfer guru, Fabrizio Romano, on the candidates awaiting for Chelsea.
It's revolution time at Chelsea, I would say, again, because after spending big money on Graham Potter in September to appoint him from Brighton to trigger the clause, now they are back at new manager search after the decision on Saturday night to fire Graham Potter and to go for a different coach. This is revolution again, and they can't miss. This time they can't really miss for Chelsea project to pick the best manager. This is why the owners, Todd Boehly, Behdad Eghbali, and the board of Chelsea is now in the process to pick the best manager. They will take some time, some days, some hours, but from what I'm told, they want a new coach as soon as possible. So I'm not sure that this is going to take a lot of time. It, of course, depends on the conversations, but Chelsea will try to have the new coach as soon as possible. So from what I understand, Julian Nagelsmann is the favorite candidate. Of course, Christopher Wiewel, the technical director of Chelsea, is German and knows very well the qualities, the skills of Julian Nagelsmann. So he's one of those who's pushing to have Nagelsmann as future coach of Chelsea Football Club. But not the only one. Also, other people into the board are big fan of Nagelsmann. So this is why there was already an approach. And from what I understand, it was positive. Nagelsmann is open to speak to Chelsea, to discuss with Chelsea about the long-term project. So Nagelsmann is attracted by this possibility. But we have to see how the conversation will continue in this sense, as Nagelsmann was thinking of a potential break after the shocking story with Bayern replacing him with Thomas Tuchel, unexpected decision. And so Nagelsmann is for sure the favorite candidate. Not the only one, because Chelsea, as we mentioned, they can't miss again on the coach. And so they want to make sure the decision has to be the best one. This is why there will be conversations also with other agent representatives or managers. From what I heard, there are other candidates like Luis Enrique, who's always been appreciated internally at Chelsea, leadership, experience, an excellent coach who is appreciated. But as I mentioned, the favorite remains Julian Nagelsmann. I would also keep an eye on Ruben Amorim, the coach of Sporting in Portugal, doing an excellent job, young, talented. He would cost 16 million euros. And so this is also a point that it's never easy to negotiate with Portuguese clubs. But for sure, Chelsea are exploring multiple options. They will make a decision together, the owners, the board. They know that they can't miss. And this is why this is going to take probably some hours and days. But the idea was to change because they want to feel something fresh, something new energy. And Julian Nagelsmann is one to watch for sure, because this looks like an incredible opportunity for Nagelsmann, but also a good opportunity for Chelsea to have a young, talented coach. This is the feeling into the board. The conversation is ongoing, but Chelsea will only proceed with the final green light when they will be 100% convinced.
And that was Fabrizio Romano reporting on the candidates for Chelsea. We've also made sure to have a man on the ground as we speak, as the person who usually is with me live, but is at Stamford Bridge now, is Dad, and he talks a little bit about the situation that is in and around Chelsea.
I am at Stamford Bridge, and it's been some hectic days, some hectic hours, especially after the loss against Aston Villa. And of course, Todd Boehly, that's the guy we know, and the media in England is talking about his naivety, his arrogance. But remember, Boehly is just the guy who kind of talked to the media, the guy we see. There is an investor group behind him that also needed to be convinced to get Potter in, and that was to get a Potter in, a guy that could lead the project, so to say. But it was even harder for them to admit that they were wrong. Imagine these people taking over a club like Chelsea Football Club. We were winning everything. It's in the middle of Western London, so to say. It's a very prestigious club to own, and these kind of investor, they like that. They like to take their friends here. They like to do business here, and then they want to run a football club like they do with their business. So the idea of Graham Potter to come in was good, because it was a romantic way. It was a Hollywood-like script, starting in Sweden, doing the things he did in England, especially with Brighton. So yeah, that's the guy we need. But the problem is you have to win football games. And when you have a look at the table now, Chelsea, well, we don't have to look on the table to see that, but Chelsea haven't played well. And also against Aston Villa, yes, they had shots on target, but it's so hard to see what Graham Potter wants with his team. So also from a football point of view, it was the right decision to take him out now, because time, patience, that is nothing that you get in these big clubs. So Julian Nagelsmann, they say, is the favorite, but they are talking about here at Chelsea to talk with different candidates. What has always surprised me is if you see these shortlists of candidates, there is a big space between their philosophy. So you wonder if in their business, these big time investors, if they got an oil company, a gas company, they will look for someone who have the quality in doing that. Of course, but they don't want to take someone who is just far away from their business idea. So if you run a football club like a business, you should start with the needs, with the players you have, with the philosophy and the way you wanted to play here, and then you'll have a shortlist based on that. But here you can have everything from Thomas Frank could be on a list, or Zinedine could be on a list, or Julian Nagelsmann, of course. But you have to have a look at their philosophy, how they want to play, and how they want to take this club further ahead. Bruno Salter is the interims manager. He says in the papers today, I'm speaking on Tuesday, and behind me here tonight is going to be another game. It's going to be Chelsea against Liverpool. And he's saying this is the first time I pick a team. Well, let's put it that way. You got a lot of players to pick from. I think that is a part of the problem here. You bought in players without any plan. You just see some developing players and you put the transfer fee on them as they are world stars. And I think that was something to do with a problem Graham Potter had as well. You had to keep everybody happy, which is not possible with so many players. And the problem for Chelsea Football Club and for Julian Nagelsmann, if he comes in here, that he has to work with these players, because I can't see them going on another rush to get in new players. But anyway, this is Jan Fjortoft for the German Fußball podcast at the Stamford Bridge in London.
Thank you, Dad, for sharing your thoughts on the Chelsea situation. Now, we've covered the managerial changes, we've covered the Klassiker, we've covered the confrontation, the fight between Oliver Kahn and Lothar Matthäus. However, we also had a Bundesliga round on our hands. Now, a quick run through, we can see that Union Berlin now are 6 points ahead of RB Leipzig in fourth, which means that they are in relative good contention for a Champions League spot. And what a story that is. Next game, Dortmund against Union. Now Union go away to Dortmund, they win. Then what? Well, we'll see. Dortmund are still very much in it to challenge for the title, their first loss of the season. So nothing done and dusted in the title race. As for high-flying teams, you have Mainz, led by a Bo Svensson, up against his former teammate Marco Rose, and they win 3-0 away. RB Leipzig did not bring much to the table. Mainz won thoroughly deserved, and a Jork up top, excuse the pronunciation, a 6'5" presence, good with his feet, and a wonderful goal. See it if you have not. A great scoop from Strasbourg, initially linked to clubs last summer, with the contract soon expiring, got at a discount in January. Mainz very much in the contention for European spots as they fight with Leverkusen, who won 3-0 against Schalke, led by Xabi Alonso, obviously, and a Frimpong, who will be linked to clubs, a former Celtic player. And then you have Eintracht playing against Bochum, a draw for Eintracht, who now very much have to fight for European places, of which they will place the utmost importance, trying to get to that 6th spot at the very least after initially fighting for the Champions League spots. Somewhat found themselves in a downward spiral, led by Oliver Glasner, who has yet to sign a new contract extension and who will be linked to bigger jobs due to his performances, amongst them being the Europa League triumph last year. Now, we have the relegation scrap. Stuttgart have their 4th manager of the season, Sebastian Hoeneß, not the son, of Uli Hoeneß, but Dieter Hoeneß, also a former West Germany player. Sebastian Hoeneß gained a lot of respect, credibility with his job for Hoffenheim when he parted ways with them after he led them to a 9th spot. So very much a capable manager for a Hoffenheim team back in the day, who now, after finding themselves rather hopelessly at the bottom of the table, have gotten themselves a slight cushion ahead of Hertha Berlin, who are in qualification spots, who gained an important point away to Freiburg, who very much are in Champions League contention. Now, we have other games on our hands. We also have cup games this week as well. If you hear this, when you hear this, cup games might have been played, will be played, which will also determine certain teams' run-in and what they deem a success. But up for us to determine. We will analyze this when we get back next week following the conclusion of this weekend's Bundesliga rounds. But thank you so much for joining us. And before I leave you, I saved the best to last, just as a reminder of the hierarchy, I don't know, of looks between the Fjortofts. We had a nice little message as I interviewed Andy Gray in celebration of the PFA 50th Awards, of which he won Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year, actually, the first player to do so back in 76-77. Here's a little voice note from Andy Gray.
There's this young man just arrived at my house called Markus Fjortoft, and he tells me he's your son. Now, the only thing I could say to your son is, thank God he looks like his mother. That's all I can say.
And on that note, I leave you, dear listener. A nice little one from Andy Gray, who was a great sport for the interview he did. Until next time, enjoy the cup games, enjoy the Bundesliga weekend, as we undoubtedly will have such an exciting run-in, both on the title race front, but also in the relegation battle in terms of gaining Bundesliga survival. But thank you, and auf Wiedersehen.